Hey, it's time for a bass lesson, and today's is about changing the strings on your electric bass. All right, so there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of stuff to know to be able to do this. Uh, but out of all those different things that you have to know, I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible and explain as best I can what you need to know. Okay, so modern electric basses come in different scale lengths. When I say scale length, that means not a musical scale. No, it has to do with the length of the bass from here, from the nut to where the strings meet at the bridge. Okay, what is normally called long scale is for a 4-string bass from the nut to where the strings meet on the bridge is 34 inches. For a 5-string bass, it's 35 inches. So later this afternoon, today, Saturday, when we get together and change the strings on your bass, we'll measure it and you'll see from the nut up here to the bridge, instead of 34 inches like a 4-string bass, your 5-string is going to be 35 inches. That's what's called long scale. Okay, so there are a number of different kinds of bass strings, and over the years I've tried a lot of different kinds.
Defined as being 34 inches or longer. The most important thing you'll need to determine is the scale of your instrument and then find strings to match. So start by measuring between the nut on your bass guitar to the bridge of your bass guitar. This will give you the effective scale length that you need for your instrument. Short scale strings are for smaller guitars with shorter distances between the nut and the bridge of the guitar. These strings are known for having less tension, and they're great for younger players or just players looking for shorter spacing in between frets. They're also generally fatter or have a heavier gauge, and they're known for producing wide and smooth low notes. Long scale strings are now the industry standard. Typically, the lower a note is, the longer the string needs to be in order to maximize the fundamental tone of that note. Now for 5-scale basses, the industry standard is gradually shifting from 34 inches to 35-inch scale. That extra inch gives just enough tension to give the low B string better tone, feel, and articulation.
So there are a lot of different kinds of bass strings. Now, what I want to show you is over the years I have used a lot of different kinds of bass strings, and I have decided that the sound of these strings that are called round wound are the sound that I like. Now, here is a package of an old set of strings, the strings that are on here actually that I'm going to change, by a company called Roto Sound. Roto Sound Swing Bass is the name of these particular kind of strings. The numbers 45, 65, 85, 105 refer to the gauge of each individual string. The big 105, that's my low E string, and the littlest number, the 45, is the G string. Okay, so E, A, D, G. Okay, so stainless steel round wound bass guitar strings, long scale, right? That's long scale is the normal scale for electric basses. Okay, so on the back, there's some more information on these strings, and you can see each one has a different thickness, and it's got the string name E, A, D, and G next to it, and each of the little ball ends that it has is color coded, so it makes it easy to tell which one you're looking at. Now I'm going to try to take the camera out and show you on the bass. You can see the little ball ends are color coded, just like on the package here. There you go. You can see them. Okay, so cool. That's the ball end of the string. All right. Now, let me put the camera back in. Okay, so you saw the package of strings called Roto Sound. The type of strings that I'm going to be putting on both of my basses today are called Kurt Mangan strings. They are nickel wound bass guitar strings. Once again, they go 45 through 105, the string gauge, okay? And that's pretty much it. Now, I've got another package of them opened. I'll show you. These that I'm putting on today, they don't have the different colored ball ends. They have just regular colored gold ball ends, and that's okay. We'll go through all that in a minute. There are, like I was saying, a lot of different kinds of bass strings. These Kurt Mangan strings, I like these because they don't cost too much, and they sound pretty good. The Roto Sound strings sound a little bit better than these, and they cost more too. So that's going to be a thing. You know, you get what you pay for. Anyway, let's go on. There's an important concept that I want to try to explain to you about an electric bass and string tension and neck tension. All right, so when a bass, let's look at my other bass here. When a bass is just sitting here under string tension, okay, the strings are tuned up. Each of these strings is pulling because it's tight. It's pulling from where it's attached here to where it's attached down at the bottom. And so all the string tension of this bass is pulling forward. It's pulling the neck forward. Almost like a bow and arrow, okay? It's trying to pull that neck forward. Now, in most regular electric basses, inside the neck of the bass is a thing called a truss rod. Now, you see this little black thingy right here? That is an opening to adjust the truss rod. I'll try to show you. There is a little screw down inside that little hole, and what is done is that screw tightens or loosens the truss rod. The truss rod is basically just a long bolt that goes through the neck. It's on the inside of the neck, and when you tighten it, it pulls the neck back the other way against the string tension, okay? So that way, if the string tension is always pulling the neck forward, that truss rod is adjusted to pull the neck back so that it's nice and straight. So you'll have a nice straight playing surface to play on. Okay, so the reason I want to explain the concept of string tension and neck tension is to explain that an electric bass is a musical instrument that is under a balance. The string tension is balanced against the neck tension with the truss rod, okay? This is why when you are watching some of the string changing videos on YouTube, you will see some people take wire cutters or anything that will cut wire like this and just snap the strings and just cut them. Please don't do that. That's a bad idea. I'll tell you why. If you suddenly cut these strings while they're tuned up, you're removing all that tension suddenly from the neck, and it can cause damage to the instrument. It can damage the neck. It can break the truss rod. It doesn't mean that it will. It means that it can. And we want to be safe. We want to be careful. So, what I am saying is we're going to do it the safe way. And that is, we're going to change one string at a time. We're going to loosen up the G string, the smallest string. We're going to remove it. We're going to put the new string in, figure out how long it needs to be, cut the new string, wind the new string, tighten it, and tune it up. And then we'll replace the next string, the D string, and then we'll replace the A string and then the E string. When I change the strings on your basses later today, I'm going to do it that same way, and then we'll change that B string last so that the string tension stays on the bass. It won't be all of the string tension because we'll be loosening one of them, but the rest of it will stay, and that's a safer way to make sure that the bass stays adjusted correctly. Be right back. A few important considerations to think about before we start is you want to have the bass in a safe place. If you have a hard case like this usually is a safe place. I've got it sitting on top of an amplifier. I wouldn't want anybody to come along and bump it and knock it over. The whole thing would go crashing to the ground. That's not good. If you set it on the floor, just make sure it's not an area where somebody's going to come walking through. You know, you want to just look around your environment and make sure nothing's going to fall. Make sure this thing isn't going to fall over, stuff like that. The next thing is, let's take the strings that the new strings that we're going to put on the bass. So make sure that we've got everything that we need. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bass strings, okay? And on these packages, it shows which one is in which package, which is helpful. This shows the 45, which is the G string, the 65, D, the 85, which is the A string, and the 105, which is the big old E string. All right, so we're going to start with the 45, all right, and we will take off that G string. Another important thing to do before we get started, you've got your strings, your bass is in a safe place, but we need to take a look at how the strings that are on it right now are attached. This is important. Let's look at this headstock. Okay, you can see with, like right now, my finger is on the E string, okay? And we come up here and you can see that it attaches to the tuner on this side, not on the outside. It attaches on the inside. Same here on this A string. You see how each of these attaches to the tuner? The string attaches on the same side of the tuner. All right, that's an important thing. You want to make sure when you take your strings off that it looks at least similar to this. They should all be attached to a similar side of the tuning peg, just like that. And when we put the new ones on, we're going to cut them to length and then attach them. All right, so watch as we loosen this G string. Just going to take the tension off of that. Unwind, unwind. We're unwinding. Unwind, unwind. Yeah, it's getting pretty loose. I'm unwinding it. I'm unwinding it. Now, you'll notice as it gets really loose on that peg, there, you can kind of see it. Wait, there, kind of see it. You see the string is getting loose on the peg to the point where you can pull it off. Okay, I've pulled it off of the peg. It's come out from under the string retainer, which is this little thing right here that holds the G and D strings down. Okay, so now it's kind of loose. It's free. Now, let's look at this part here. What I want to do, this is a part that can poke you. No fun. It can hurt you. So carefully take the end of this string between your thumb and forefinger and pull this out so that you kind of unwind this. The reason you want to do this is when we pull this through the hole at the end, we're going to be pulling that out of there, right? I want this to be unwound a little bit so that it's not all tight and curly like it was. Let's demonstrate, okay? I'm just going to lay this down. I'm going to carefully work this back through here. Okay. Now, I'm gonna grab that ball end, pull that out. Now I'm just gonna pull this string out. It's coming out. It's going out. And it's come out. And now it's laying on the floor. One string down. Okay, so that one's good. Let's take our replacement string, the 45. That's the G string. I'm going to take it out, and you'll see it's kind of wrapped up, kind of wound up. So I'm just going to unwind it. It is a very thin string. It is the thinnest of the ones we'll put on there. There's that ball end. Here is the wire end. Okay, you can see there's a thin single piece of wire, and the outer wire is wrapped around it. It's difficult to see on the iPhone, on the cell phone, but there's little ridges. Those ridges are what makes it round wound. If they were flat and this looked more solid, it would be called a flat wound string. It would sound a little bit different. I like round wounds. Anyway, we'll take this end. We're going to poke it back through the little hole down here, right down here at the end for the G string, and we'll run it all the way up through there. So I'll poke it through there. It's going to go up over this bridge piece. Okay. See this here? It goes up over that. I'm going to pull that. This part is important. You got to make sure that this ball end is tight up against here. You don't have to yank it with all your strength. No. Just hold it against there. Okay. There's a little slot there. It's got to be in that slot. Okay. Now it's going to lay in the nut slot right here. It's going to go up under the string retainer, and then it'll wind onto that post. But before we wind it on that post, we need to cut it to length, okay? So, how many winds do we want on the post? This is a very important question. For the G string and the D string, the first and second string, you're going to want about 4 winds on the post. The A string, you're going to want to get almost the whole post full of winds. That may be 4 or 5 windings. There is a reason for that. And the E string is also going to have about 4 windings. The reason for that, I'm going to have to take this back off the holder again. The reason for that is you have to have a downward angle here. It has to pull the string at a downward angle toward the peg head. It can't come straight. That's one of the reasons that you've got this string retainer here, is to keep a good downward angle. So we have to have enough windings on the string. Each of the windings goes below the last one. Okay, you can see how the string is always on the bottom. The string is always on the bottom of the peg. It always comes down to the bottom. So when you're winding it, the string is always on the bottom. Now, we've got to figure out how long this is going to need to be. So let me put this back on the camera holder. Okay, so to determine the length that I want to cut on this G string, what I did is I went ahead and set it in place, put it in the nut slot and under the string retainer, and I wrapped it around this peg here, the tuning peg, 4 times. And then I pinched the end of it, and that's where I want to cut the string. I'm going to go ahead and cut the string there. And I've got a little piece of string end. These can poke you, and they can poke people and pets and everything, so be careful with these. Put them in the trash can. Be cautious, okay? All right. So the G string is now cut to length. So there are a couple of different kinds of tuners, the tuning pegs. Some just have a slot cut in them, and some have a slot with a hole. A lot of them have that hole in the middle. The hole is to accept the end of the string. The end of the string goes in that hole, and then it winds in that slot. I'll demonstrate. Okay, so we're going to get the string, set it in the slot, go under the retainer, and set the end of the string in the hole. All right, and it's going to wind to the outside. Oopsie. They do that. Once again, putting the camera back on the holder, and then I can do this from over there. Difficult. Okay, let's try again. Now, got to put the string in the slot under the retainer and put the end of the string in the hole, being cautious to not stab yourself, because these things really will do that. All right, now it doesn't want to stay in there either. It's not going to stay in and just be easy. All right, so I've got the end of it in that hole now. So what I want to do is wind it. I'm going to have to hold the string so it doesn't pop out. It wants to. Wind it around that peg. Okay, you can see how now I've got one wind on it, and it's kind of similar to these others in that it's winding around that direction. All the other strings are too. They all have to wind the same way. So I'm going to hold this with my other finger, and I'm going to wind it again. Very important part. You have to go underneath the winding you just did. Each winding goes underneath, okay, so that the string is always at the bottom of the peg. I'm going to hold this with my finger again so it doesn't pop off, and try to go around one more time. Getting kind of tight. I won't be able to wrap it with my fingers. Yeah, okay, I can't get it to go around again, so I'm just going to hold it with this hand. Once again, I'm holding the string down at the bottom, and now I'm just going to tighten it up so that it winds onto the bottom. Okay, this is just going to take a little bit. It's going to wind. I'm going to wind it. Yay, we're winding. We're winding. Okay. All I did right there is just kind of stick it under that string retainer so it's holding it down. I'm just going to continue winding it. Just make sure it's going onto the peg straight and not jumping over the other windings. All right. The string is starting to tighten up. I want to make sure my finger doesn't get trapped underneath the string. That's painful. Okay. So keep winding, keep winding. Okay, make sure the string is in the slot. It's getting tighter. Hey, it's making a noise, okay? I know that the string needs to, I don't know if you can hear that, I can. It's a little flat, so we're going to bring it up. Okay. I wound up with almost 4 windings. Okay, let's see if I can show you up close. Now here it looks like 3 windings of the new string, but over here where the string is actually on the peg, it's almost 4 windings. That's really just about what you want for the G string and the D string. We'll want more than that for the A string and more than that for the E string also. When we get to the B string on your 5-string bass, also it's going to want some windings also. It's very close to the nut. Here's the thing. The lowest string is very close to the nut. The angle of the strings as they come down, you want that to be similar. That angle is going to be a little bit sharper. It's going to be a little bit more severe of an angle for this lowest string. Okay, let's keep going. Now we have changed the G string. So this is a new string. So all we got to do now is keep on changing strings one at a time. All right? So let's loosen up this next string. Loosen it, loosen it. Loosen the string, loosen the string. Okay, it's very loose. It's coming loose. It has come out of the retainer. And now I'm going to unwind it off of the peg. It's gotten loose because I've been unwinding it. Here's that end part I was telling you about. We want to carefully take that end part, pull it apart, and stretch it so that it's a little bit looser so that it will go through that little hole in the bridge easier. Let's hang on to that. We will loosen this part down here in the bridge. So that'll slide out. Let's grab that ball end, pull the string all the way out. Let that set on the floor. Let's find the package that has our D string. That's the number 65. Okay, I'll pull that out of the package. It's wound up. I'm going to unwind it. Here we are unwinding the string. All right, fun, fun. Sometimes I don't want to. All right, so here's the pointy end and the ball end. Let's take the pointy end, go through the hole at the end of the bridge. What I find that I usually have to do is poke this through the hole about 1 inch and bend it just a little bit. I'll show you. I'm gonna poke it through there, I'm gonna bend it. Now it's got a little bend in the end of it. The reason I do that is so that when I poke it through the hole, now that it's got a bend in it, I can make it go up over the top of this bridge piece, which it has to do. Makes it a little bit easier. So I can just drop that ball end. I'm going to pull the string all the way through, again, making sure that the ball end is tight against the bridge, okay? Let it go down here where it's supposed to go. It's going to go in this little nut slot here and under the string retainer, and then we're going to figure out about 4 wraps worth of length. So I've got it laid in there, and I'm just kind of loosely wrapping it around there. I'm just determining how long I want this to be. Okay, and there, that's pretty good. I think, oh, about right there. I've wrapped it around about 3.5, almost 4 times. There we go. So I'm just gonna hold this, because that's where I'm gonna cut it. And I get my wire cutters, and I cut it right where I was holding it. Okay, here's the pointy end. Put that in the trash can. This end of the string is going to go in the little hole down in the tuning peg. So let's go ahead and put it in there. Now, we're going to hold it in there with the finger of our other hand and wrap the string around so that it winds the same way as the other strings. The newest winding goes underneath the oldest winding so that the string is always at the bottom of the windings. Oops, came loose. It does that. Okay, make sure it's seated down in there real good. Wrap it around. I don't think I can make one more loop with my hand, so I'm just going to hold it under this little string retainer right here. Can you see that? I don't think you can. Okay. Once the string is kind of started on the peg, try to get it under the string retainer and into the nut slot, okay? And if you'll hold it like that, now you're holding the base, you can slowly tighten it. And you just want to make sure that the string goes on the bottom of all these windings. The retainer should help with that. And you just tighten it up, tighten it up, tighten it up. It's going on there nice and straight. We're good. String's getting tight. There we go. Okay, so now we've got 2 new strings on. Let's take off the old A string. I'm going to loosen it up, loosen it up, loosen it up. Here we go. Getting loose, getting loose. Okay, here's the end. So carefully grab the tip of that and pull it apart. Stretch that so that it opens up a little bit so that it'll go through the hole in the bridge easier. Hold that with this hand. Loosen up that ball end. Grab the ball end and pull it through. Pull the old string out to the trash can with that string. Now let's find our new A string, which is the 85. Take it out of the package. Unwind the A string. We got our ball end and we've got our pointy end. Take the pointy end, insert just the end of it through the hole and put a little bend on it. When you put the little bend on it, it'll look kind of like that. Now, this time when you put it through the hole, use that bend to go above the bridge piece, right down here. Makes it easier, okay? Pull it all the way through. Again, make sure the ball end is all the seated against that hole there. Pull it all the way through. You'll see this time we don't have a retainer. And this is the A string, so we have to make sure we have some more windings on this. All right? So it's sitting in the nut slot. I'm just going to wrap it around there, see how many times I need to go. 4, 5. Looks like, I am going to go about right here, okay? And I can see where I'm holding it is actually past the end of the headstock. That's pretty long. I'm leaving a lot of length on this bass string. I want to because I want a lot of windings on this peg for this A string. Now, I'm going to go ahead and cut that where I'm holding it, okay? Right there. Now, take the pointy end, put that in the trash can, and take your cut end, stick that in the hole in the peg, and wind it to the outside. Just like this. There we go. And the new windings go underneath the old windings. This one is a little difficult because you really want to get this one down as close to the bottom as you can. Now I'm going to get this up closer to the camera so you can see what I've got going. I've got it started on there. I'm holding it down with my thumb. You can see where it's going on. Okay, I'm holding it with my thumb. And now I'm just gonna, I'm gonna switch hands so I can wind it. Hold it down with that thumb, all right? And I'm gonna wind it up tight. Now when it gets close to tight, I'm gonna have to slip this in its little nut slot. And that won't be too much of a problem. I'm winding. Uh-oh, it got crossed up. Gotta be careful, that stuff will happen. It tried to get behind the whole base. All right, we're winding. I'm holding it tight with the thumb of my right hand and tightening it with my left. And we're getting a bunch of windings on this peg, which is what I want. Okay, it went in its slot. It's starting to get tight. Nice, okay. Now we're gonna show you what we got here. I don't have it tuned up yet, but I'm tightening it up. Okay, I've got the A string on. I want you to notice how many windings. That's like 5 windings, okay? Now the reason I've got so many is like I was saying before, I want the angle of this to be pretty steep. It needs to go kind of this way after the nut. It needs to be held tight in that nut, and that's why this is important. This needs to have more windings on it than these others do, just so this angle will stay correct and this will stay nice and tight in there. Okay, now let's do the last one. Let's do the E string. I'm going to lay it back in its case, and we will loosen the E string. Loose, 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 very loose. This one will have probably 4 windings. I'm going to take this end, stretch out the end a little bit to make it easier to come out here. Sometimes gives us a problem anyway. All right, fun. Get stuck in there. Haha. All right, you'll notice this is a thick string, and when we change the B string on your 5 string, it's even thicker than this. This is a 105, pretty large. The B string is going to be even bigger. So anyway, set that on the ground. Let's get our replacement brand new 105 string. Pull that out of there and unwind it. There we go. Take the sharp end, poke just the end through the hole, and put a bend on the string. When you put the bend on a string, it's going to look, kind of like that. Again, this is so that it'll make it easier once you put it through the hole for it to go above the bridge piece. I went above that bridge piece. Having that bend made that easy. Okay, now I'm going to pull it all the way through. Make sure that the ball end is tight up against the bridge. And it's going to go down here. And it's going to lay in its nut slot. And I'm going to wind it about 4 times just to see what the length needs to be. 1, 2, 3, 4. And a little bit. Okay, I'm going to hold that tight. Hold my finger tight on that where it needs to be, and then I'm going to cut it right there, right where my fingernail is. Okay, now I'm taking the sharp end, throwing that in the trash can, and now I'll put this on the tuning peg. Okay, that's tight. That's where it goes, and this would be like this. So let's poke that head into there, and we wind it up just like those others. This time, I've got 4 wraps on there, I think. And I'm holding it with my thumb. I'm just holding it on there. Show you what I've got so you can see where it is. It's not all the way tight, obviously. I'm just holding that in place with my thumb. I'm going to lay it back in the case. I just wanted to show you that. I'm going to switch hands again. This thumb will hold this string down here. Now I can set it in the slot, but I want to make sure it's at the bottom. So I'm putting my thumb closer and holding the string down at the bottom. Now I'm going to tighten it. Here I am tightening it. If you do this for a while, you're going to notice it makes your thumb pretty sore. Mine does too. Okay. All right, it's getting tight. It's getting tight. It's in the slot. All right. All right, now let's take a look at the angles that we wound up with on our strings. You'll notice the angle on this first string is the most severe or tightest angle of any of them. It goes pretty far down. We want that. On the second string, okay, this one is probably the highest up of all of them, and yet it's still gonna be good enough to hold the string down below the nut, which is what we want. This A string, we want these 4 and 5 wraps on this one. We want about 4 wraps on this. Now, the D and G string, they're good with 3 wraps. They're fine because the string retainer holds their level down. So that is how we change the strings. All the strings are changed. Now, another couple of important things to know. For the next 2 days, these strings will be settling in. They've never been under tension before, and now they are. Okay, they're going to go out of tune really easy. Okay, so we have to stretch them out. We are going to stretch them just a little bit, and this is how we do that. What I do with brand new strings is I'll put my fingertips under the string, my thumb on top of the string, and I will go down the string, stretching it like this. Not very hard, not very hard, just enough to bend the string a little, all the way down, okay, all the way down to here. And I'll go back and I'll bend it, and you'll notice now it's going to be really flat. So I'll tune it back up. Okay, and it's just close, it's not exact. And you want to bend each of your strings, stretch them I should say, stretch them all the way down. I'm just kind of gently pulling up with my fingertips. Ooh, hard to show you. Pulling up with the fingertips and pushing down with the thumb. Okay? It's to bend each little stretch, each little part of the string. And I'll do that on all these strings. I'll go down and stretch them all the way down. Each of those. Maybe more than once. But still, even with that, over the next 2 days, these brand new strings are going to go out of tune kind of easily. Okay? So let's go ahead and do the other bass, and then you and I will get together and we'll change the strings on your basses today. Here we go.